Hi everybody, I'm Crystal Haynes. Tonight on Greater Boston, we are looking at the inundation of sports gambling ads around the state and their offers of free bets. We'll dig into how free they actually are with a local lawmaker who is helping to protect consumers from the sports books. Then a look at the local documentary Girl Talk, the local film partnership Shared Stories, and the 25th annual Roxbury International Film Festival. If you are a living, breathing resident of Massachusetts, you have surely been subject to the barrage of sports betting ads coming at us from all directions these days, from social media and TV to billboards along your commute to work. The deluge started just a couple of weeks back when sports betting officially became legal in the state, and ever since, apps like FanDuel, MGM, and DraftKings have been using familiar Boston faces like David Ortiz, Kevin Garnett, and Zdeno Chara to get you to place your bets. Not to mention some aggressive promotional offers with the apps giving users quote unquote free money on their platforms, claiming that you can't lose because they're funding your initial bets. Sound too good to be true? Well, it just might be. A bill proposed in the state Senate takes aim at that kind of language, aiming to amend a long-standing consumer protection law to prohibit certain kinds of language and promotions in sports betting ads. The amendment was presented by State Senator John Keenan, who joins me now, along with Victor Ortiz, the director of the Office of Problem Gambling Services. Welcome, gentlemen.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So, Senator Keenan. Yeah, thank you so much. So, Senator Keenan, talk to me a little bit about this particular bill.
So what the bill does, it addresses unfair, deceptive, misleading advertising. We have Chapter 93A, which is the Massachusetts Consumer Protection Statute, and that addresses unfair or deceptive acts and practices. And what this bill would do, this proposed legislation, would make phrases or practices such as odds boost or bet free or the types of things we're seeing, bet $5 and get $200. It would make those things as a matter of law unfair and deceptive and would prohibit them.
We know that we have been seeing these ads, and so I'm thoughtful about the conversation around addiction and gambling addiction. And Victor, first, for folks who may not be familiar with this particular type of addiction, how do we classify gambling addiction?
It's classified as an addiction. A few years ago, it was actually integrated within substance addiction as an addiction under the DSM-5. And when you examine gambling addiction and substance addiction, there's a lot of profound overlap. Actually, the data and the research tells us that over 97% of people who have a gambling disorder have had a pre-existing mental health and substance use disorder prior to the onset of gambling. So they're very much between mental health, substance addiction, and gambling addiction are very much jointed together in a very integrated way.
You work in this space. Talk to me about when we are seeing what we described as a deluge of ads. It seems as though it's almost like, and forgive me if this is not a good analogy, but like someone trying to hand you liquor on the street if you have an alcohol addiction.
It's interesting you say that because I think over the last 2 weeks I've engaged in more conversations than ever before from people who are just extremely concerned, whether it's community members, clinical providers, parents, people in recovery. I mean, that analogy did come up from a few folks who are very in tune to those realities of addiction, and have expressed their being overwhelmed with the ads as well as just the concerned nature of the ads.
Yeah, Senator Keenan, I know that you actually posted to social media about how these ads can be disruptive and distracting, and as we heard from Victor, dangerous.
You just can't escape them. I was sitting in traffic the other day, and I look over, and there on a municipal barrel, is an ad for sports betting. So it seems like everywhere you go, whether you're on your phone, on social media, newsprint, and then, of course, when you turn on the television, they're just there. And the goal is to get as many people as possible introduced to sports betting. And we know that the greater number of people that are introduced, then that percentage, whatever it may be, that is prone to addiction is there. And the broader the base, that percentage results in a greater number of people going down the path towards addiction. And for those that have struggled with addiction relative to gambling, can you imagine the situation they're in right now, where everywhere they turn, they're just being hit with this advertising? And the advertising suggests that you just can't lose, as you said in the opening, that you can bet $5 and that you'll get $200 worth of credit, that you're betting on things like if the Celtics score a basket, you win. Well, of course they're going to. But long term, we know the house always wins. And in the wake of the house winning, there are lives that are ruined, and there are significant public health issues that remain to be addressed. The better the house does, sometimes the bigger those problems are.
Well, speaking of it being a public health issue, we know that other addictive substances, whether it be drugs, whether it be alcohol, whether it be tobacco specifically, there are really tough regulations that limit the amount of ads that can be placed and where they are placed. But it doesn't seem like those regulations are in place for online betting.
They are not. When the online betting debate was going on, I looked to impose at least the restrictions that we put in place for cannabis into the sports betting industry, and it was unsuccessful. And just to take it kind of as an extreme, for instance, under our alcohol regulations, you can't have a sound truck going around promoting alcohol. Under our cannabis regulations, you can't have a sound truck going around promoting cannabis. And yet, while there was an effort to amend the sports betting bill to include that, it was unsuccessful. So you could drive around in a sound truck, it seems, and promote sports betting. And so the most basic things that we did when it came to areas that we know there are addiction issues, we haven't done here. And we know in this area, it's prone to addiction as well. And we've seen the consequences. It's just been free game.
Victor, how important is limiting these ads, regulating these ads to the clinicians and, of course, the folks who are suffering from addiction?
It's important that we continue to work towards addressing this issue, and it's important that we bring all folks together to really continue to figure this out, because I think at the stage where it is very overwhelming and there are a lot of concerns. There's no doubt about that. The other side of this is that, we understand clearly from a public health perspective that there's going to be some impact. Whether that impact is minimal, moderate or severe, there will be impact. And then that impact is could be additional addiction and or related issues. I think what people sometimes overlook, that gambling has such an interconnected to a whole host of other issues, because it's probably the one issue that has significant overlap in a lot of different areas. For example, we know from previous studies that people who are recreational gamblers have issues of obesity, for example, or take prescription drugs, or might consume alcohol higher and things of that nature. So I think that there are public health concerns here that we need to take a look at. And in particular, in that concern, in regards to the advertisement, is one of the things that's really critical from our vantage point, aside from those other macro issues, is that the one safety net based on that impact that we have is our helpline. And because we know the impact is there. And so preserving that and having it clearly outlined in the advertisement, that safety net, the only safety net that we have in the Commonwealth, is critical to ensure that when people need help, can get help via the helpline. So that's also as critical importance as well.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that one safety net that we have. The state stands to gain millions and millions of dollars in revenue from this online gambling that have been happening, this sports betting, but there's only one helpline. And it seems like where could some of that money, or should some of that money, be going to more safety nets for folks who struggle with addiction?
Yes, some of that money will be designated to help those who are struggling with addiction.
Okay.
Yes. The millions remains to be seen. It will be millions, there's no doubt. The estimates vary as low as $60 million in the first year to highs of twice that number or more. So there will be millions of dollars, but in the grand scheme of our budget, it's not a lot of money. The biggest driver of our state budget is our mass health, public health line, and providing insurance coverage for people in need. And a greater number of people rely on that than ever before. And so we may get some money in from sports betting and the taxes on that, and yet the most significant item in our budget is our health budget. And so we get a little bit here, but it costs us so much more over here. And that's just kind of in a direct way where there are issues related to addiction where there's a cost, and that's treatment. What remains to be seen is what impact this will have, and studies show that there will be impact on things like domestic violence, on issues relating to the home, children facing greater needs from schools because they're not getting supports at home because there are financial issues related to gambling. So all of that is kind of a silent cost, and it's hard to quantify it, but we know it's there, and so much of that drives what we have to do in our public health budgets and in our health insurance budgets.
Victor, how does your office and the clinicians and the support folks in your office, how do they manage, all what could be an influx of folks, or at least a number of folks who are triggered by this excitement? I know everywhere, from the news, from the radio, from billboards we talked about in the beginning of the show. How is your office managing, in this initial 2 weeks of very excitement of, basically it being legal in Massachusetts?
Well, the first thing is I'm not getting a lot of sleep. That's for sure. That's number one. Just full disclosure. But the reality is our office since 2016, when it was established, really took an approach that was very different than what is happening all over the country. And most times, most efforts are really singularly just looking at gambling. Where at DPH, we're looking at the integration of problem gambling and related issues, taking a much broader public health approach with really those key principles of public health, thinking about specifically leading with equity, thinking about people with groups that are disproportionately impacted, and really a full spectrum of services. So we have invested millions of dollars in prevention with youth, with older adults, with a whole host of prevention efforts that we are conducting at the community level. And then at the sort of on the other side of the spectrum, which is the treatment, we have one of the most comprehensive services of problem gambling treatment in the country. It starts with the helpline. We actually integrated the helpline 3 years ago with the substance abuse helpline. And as a result of the integration, we're screening up to 20,000 substance abuse callers for problem gambling, which is the largest expansion of problem gambling screening in the country. So we have taken this opportunity since 2016 and thinking about with the resources, and thanks to the legislators who actually made that happen for us to have those resources, think about what can we do better in Massachusetts from a public health perspective as it relates to gambling. But this sports wagering brings a new challenge. And it is a new challenge that we're closely monitoring and preparing for this moment. We are monitoring our helpline and enhance our helpline. We've enhanced our prevention programming and our community resources. Because we know that we're preparing for this moment that we're in, but at the same time, we're keeping a close ear to the ground and listening to community members. And as I mentioned when I started, I'm on the phone every day, consistently talking to parents, talking to folks in recovery, talking to community members who are expressing being overwhelmed and concerned because they know our office. I mean, one of the things about our office is that we've engaged over 2,000 individuals at the community level, the majority people of color, as part of lifting up their voice to inform our programs. And so we're very fortunate to have those relationships, and boy, are we hearing from them.
Victor Ortiz, Senator Keenan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
So if you need help with a gambling problem or would just like to find out more information, you can call the Massachusetts Problem Gambling Helpline. That number is 1-800-327-5050, or go to gamblinghelplinema.org. Next up, amid the years of hard work, practice, and dedication to their craft, the girls of the Newton South High School debate team have also had to confront the status quo in a system that favors their male counterparts.
I had a lot of comments on ballots, like too aggressive, tone it down a little. I had multiple comments on like skirt is too short. I made a decision at one point to wear pants. I thought I felt less girl-like.
The judge is just going to vote for who looks like a winner, so to speak. Stereotypes have shown looking like a winner oftentimes isn't very feminine.
It's really hard as a woman to not come across as, like, bitchy, right? Like, aggressive, powerful women are not what people want to see necessarily.
So their story is the focus of the film Girl Talk, which is set to air in Boston tomorrow as part of the run-up of the 25th annual Roxbury International Film Festival. The event is hosted by Arts Emerson's Shared Stories program. It's a collaboration between the Roxbury Festival and the Boston Asian American Film Festival and Scene Fest Latino Boston. I'm joined now by Lisa Simmons, Artistic Director and Executive Director of the Roxbury International Film Festival, and Susan Chinsen, founding director of the Boston Asian American Film Festival. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Talk to me about this partnership when we're talking about Arts Emerson and the different film festivals.
So, I mean, I think that Susan and Sabrina and I came together a number of years ago and decided that we really wanted to make sure that our audiences sort of like came together to see each other's work. And what we felt was that the Shared Stories program, we realized we are more alike than we are not. And so we were talking about, films. We're like, oh my gosh, my family's like that, or people would, that come to my festival would love that film. And so Shared Stories began, and it really was a way for us to come together as three festivals, women-led festivals, women of color-led festivals, to say, we really want to use film as a catalyst for conversation, and we want to bring people to the table thinking that we can show people that that's the whole thing, is that we're more alike than we are not.
And in choosing this particular film, Girl Talk, does that sort of tie into this film, theme of the shared stories, obviously, but also, it seems like there's some woman power happening as well, right?
There definitely is. I think we oftentimes try and find parallel themes about sort of like what is happening with March, being Women's History Month, thinking about, what are some of the commonalities of themes that we can all share. Besides being women of color, stories where it is also gender is also layered in with that. Wanting to sort of recognize that this film is set here in Boston, the filmmaker is also from Boston, that there are ways that we can actually connect this film even deeper to sort of the experiences of, the communities of color here in Boston as well.
This film has such a powerful message and also shows these girls who are trying to work so hard. They've worked over school years to get to where they are, and they're experiencing this genderism and probably undercurrents of racism as well in this space at such a young age. What struck you the most about their story and their stories in this film?
Well, I mean, I think because as women of color especially, as a woman of color especially, you face that every day, right? I mean, I feel like there was so much in this film that I could relate to, not being on a debate team. I wasn't on a debate team. But just like growing the festival to where it is today, and the fights that you have to fight, and the pushback that you get oftentimes as a woman when you're trying to build something, right? When you're trying to be at the top of your game, and there are gatekeepers. And so I think that for anyone, it's not just about, this film isn't just for like girls who might be facing these, but it's for all of us women who have spent our lives sort of like pushing against something that's not being flexible and trying to find your way to the top of that. So I think that that's inspiring too. And I think these young girls are inspiring, that they're just like unapologetically, we're gonna get there.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that I was really impressed with, watching these girls grow up essentially and mature over the course of the time that the film was recorded. One of the pieces that I really thought struck me as well was just sort of that the institution that they were working within is, there wasn't a direct way of saying like, yes, this is gender bias. You couldn't, like, it's not set up that way, and it felt very much like, so many times navigating the world these days, like, you don't know. For me, it's like, is it because maybe I'm Asian? Is it because maybe I'm a woman? Is it because I'm both? And sort of like the stereotypes that are projected, very much around appearances, tone of voice, all of those things.
Yeah, and in that vein, I do want to show this clip of a coach and a judge discussing double standard and bias in the debate world. So let's take a listen.
It's not just limited to gender. this Asian students are stereotyped as like being robotic debaters. Black debaters can be seen as like too aggressive. And in every case, you have like the other side of the coin, which is like this is one of the good ones. This is like the model of what like a debater of color or like a woman debater should be because of how closely they're acting to this like white male standard.
Let's say we figured out some training for judges such that we could eliminate their gender bias. Then the girls will have been trained to perform well in a world that does not exist.
So that struck me the most, that the girls will be trained to perform well in a world that does not exist. And as I think of you know, the spectrum of women, the fight for women's rights, and how far that everyone says that we have come, right? And then you have teenagers who come up against this wall of gender bias, and it is incredible to me.
Right, that things really haven't changed.
Yeah.
That they're fighting the fights that we were fighting, and we all continue to fight as adults, as you know, as teens. So, but what I love about it is that they are so focused on being the best, regardless of their gender,
That's
regardless of their race, and they're not going to, you know, allow that to continue to happen. You know, it's sort of like you can see the trend is moving, and you know, I love what if they can like train judges. It's like, you know, you're gonna bump up against this your whole life. You know, you're gonna like glass ceiling whatever it is, and if you can help them understand that and then learn how to fight against that, I think that that's something that's really important. Which is why I think this movie is really important for people to see.
Yeah, I think one of the other pieces too was like the layering of the fact that we're talking about Newton South High
That's
School.
right,
It is
Right.
there's a lot of privilege and affluence that comes with that, and that recognition of even with all of those socioeconomics and things in place, that they're still facing this gender imbalance. So like for people who have said we're beyond, you know, gender and sexuality, you know, gender attributions of things, it's blind, right? It's not the case.
Right.
As part of this screening, we're going to be bringing different communities together. What do you hope that they take away from this messaging? Like, is there an action statement, I guess, at the end of the screening?
I mean, I think that you take away to really honor your instinct and yourself, and don't sit back and allow people to make judgments of you and tell you who you are. I mean, you know deep in your heart who you are as a person and what your abilities are, and to not allow people to make judgments about you and tell you who you are without you know, understanding who you are. So I think that that's sort of like the takeaway for me.
Yeah, I think also part of like sort of leaning into the fact that we are 3 festivals working together, this whole medium of like bringing people together in a room, because certainly you can watch things online these days, but the ability to actually be in the same room, one, we're going to have filmmakers there. We actually have one of the protagonists there with us. We also have a community member who will be part of the conversation. And that idea of the connections, the real connections that you can make to the decision makers, to the creatives, and then also with each other's audience members. I think that was one of the stronger points of the fact that each of our festivals, we have our core audiences that typically follow us, come all the time, like we know our people. But wouldn't it be amazing if we could actually get our people together and we could become this bigger group of people in the same cause and sort of getting to know one another.
Right.
And that's the work that happens beyond the film itself, not only addressing the issues in the film, but also coming together to address, I guess, larger societal problems through art.
Yes, I mean, that's a big part of, so the other part of my hat that I wear is I'm also a creative producer at Arts Emerson. And so part of this whole collaboration came out of me being able to come on staff and having access to the screening room and resources to actually bring us together. We've wanted to work together
for years.
Years. We keep saying it, but we're all so busy. And with me being on staff, it actually enabled us to carve out the time and the resources needed to make it happen. So that was like a big part of like the fact, in the vein of also Arts Emerson sort of looking at art as a prompt and the conversation being the point. That has been a long-standing you know, tradition for the organization and something that we are continuing, and we've always also done as festivals. So this has sort of been a great collaboration.
Because we do collaborate on our own festivals. Like I'll have film screenings at my festival. Susan will, Sabrina will for Cinefest Latino Boston, and we'll be, you know, there's always a will you collaborate on this film? Will you, co-present this film? So we're constantly doing that. And then this space for shared stories just gives us the opportunity to pick one film and bring all of our audiences together.
And actually, even within this, because this is our probably third season that we're coming back. Yeah, this is the third season that we're doing this. One of the layers that we've actually been able to add on this year is actually a partnership with World Channel. And they've been able to kind of come on, and so we've selected a couple, this being one of them, to be able to feature through our season. So between now and May, folks should definitely come and check out the other films that we'll be working with them on.
And so I'm so thoughtful too about, so often this work is done in silos, and you all are like, forget about that model. We're going to work together.
Well, we have to. I mean, I think you're stronger together, and I think that we love working with each other. We are very respectful of each other's festivals, and I think that it just makes sense to be collaborating and bringing these films to spaces that may never have been seen on the big screen or something, and to be able to create a discussion around things that affect all of us.
Yeah, and I think, Lisa having her 25th anniversary is actually the 15th anniversary for my film festival as well. So we're both having these milestones, but that it definitely is this needing to wanting to work together and, in a Boston scene, right? We're here in Boston, where we've faced a lot of factors that have always sometimes been against us. So the fact that we can actually collaborate and show something different for Boston, that there's no need to compete. We can all rise together.
Incredible. Well, Lisa Simmons and Susan Chinsen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. This is great.
Yeah. To learn more about the Roxbury Film Festival and to get tickets to tomorrow's screening of Girl Talk, go to roxfilmfest.com. Girl Talk can also be streamed now on worldchannel.org. All right, everybody, that's it for tonight. But come back tomorrow for Talking Politics as evictions spike in Boston. What can the government do to keep people in their homes? Plus, Senator Ed Markey on TikTok, Biden's environmental creed, and his hometown of Malden. That and more tomorrow at 7. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Crystal Haynes. Have a great night.
Mabel was born